Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks.
Hi there. Okay, first of all, let me apologize for the sound of my voice. I am officially sick. I haven't been sick in 11 years. It came on around, I want to say Sunday. Excuse me again, see? It's already more nasally than usual. And I'm recording this on Tuesday and haven't been sleeping well. But hopefully the tide is turning here and things are working their way around. A lot of natural remedies in place and other things. It normally lasts maybe 4 or 5 days tops, but we'll see. Anyway, not bad. Not bad for not being sick for 11 years. I'll take it. Either way, my apologies. I'm going to clear my throat, and it's just going to sound odd this whole episode because it'd be way too much editing if I was editing out every single time I was clearing my throat or something else. Anyway, I have a few things I want to cover, but really one general topic, which is something that I haven't brought up on the show at all, as a matter of fact. Maybe I made mention of it once in passing, but it's a perfect time to do this episode, certainly based on something that is happening in a particular school district that I've covered with regularity, which of course is the Westerville City Schools, but it has to do with the subject of the separation of church and state and what that really means. I can't tell you how many goofballs misinterpret what Thomas Jefferson had planned for this and what he meant. It's not complicated. It truly isn't. And I'm going to give some examples of that later. I have plenty of audio to play that has everything to do with that and the separation of church and state and what it really means, and how, unfortunately, the people who scream about the separation of church and state, they have no idea what they're talking about. And when they're talking about particular religious groups, in particular Christian groups that tend to affiliate with public schools, or outside Christian groups that might, again, affiliate with the children who associate with public schools, they all of a sudden think that that's unconstitutional or that's not the way that it's supposed to be. Well, again, the people who don't understand this are people who do not read. They always leap before looking. They shoot first, they ask questions later, or they don't even ask questions, which again just makes them dumb. So I'm going to get into the history of what that term and what that phrase means, and why Thomas Jefferson very eloquently and very directly laid it out, because he knew what the problems were going to be if you had government trying to control religion and or the church and or God. That's really what it meant. It didn't mean, again, taking God out of government. It meant we don't want government to take God out of anything. But again, people don't understand this. And again, the program with this public school system that I'm specifically referencing is called LifeWise. And again, I've brought LifeWise up before regarding the Westerville City School District in Ohio, as LifeWise is affiliated with them. So I'll get into that a little bit later, although not too long here. There's only 2 particular stories and sort of observations that I've made here that I just want to mention off the top. And ironically enough, I don't have any jab-related news, so there's that. Okay. First of all, there is this, and I wanted to mention this again. This sort of fits perfectly within the goals of the Jewish lobby. It's certainly a goal of theirs to have Americans hate America and hate on other Americans, and then, of course, highlight all of the sin associated with America, and then glorify to some extent that sin. There is a show that is apparently going to be on Netflix that is called or titled Tim Dillon, This Is Your Country. Now, Tim Dillon is a stand-up comic. I think he's a writer also. Most people probably don't even know who he is. That's 100% fine. He's pretty dumb, is basically my first take. He's not an intelligent person. He's clearly only doing this for money. And essentially, this particular show that is on Netflix is basically like Jerry Springer and Maury Povich all wrapped into one. It's not new. Excuse me. It's just awful. I mean, it just is what it is. So, it glorifies broken relationships, pornography, gluttony, a number of other things. But the sad part is that people are going to run to this because it's a different generation, or I should say a different generational take on an old show that used to exist, of course, or shows that used to exist back in the 80s and 90s. So again, it's recycled trash. That's all. It's just recycled trash. It's all a distraction. Instead of having a serious show on Netflix talking about real events that are actually happening in America and who's to blame and why things are the way that they are, which again, let's face it, it would never be allowed on Netflix. That's why Netflix, again, has to be this degenerate cesspool of useless things to watch by and large, because it's a purposeful distraction. That's exactly what the Jewish lobby has set up. That's exactly how they operate. And yeah, I just wanted to let you know that there is another sort of Maury Povich / Jerry Springer kind of show with, a stand-up comic who does a lot of improv, and he's the one with a microphone walking around the crowd. There's a live studio audience. I mean, it's set up just like the rest of those shows. So I'm sure it'll be stupid. I'm not going to watch it. I saw the trailer and I went, oh yeah, I can totally understand why the Jewish lobby would enjoy this and certainly fund it. So there you go. People do anything for money. It's pretty pathetic. Anyway, with that aside, education related now, there was this, which is something I haven't commented on at all yet, but this is from 100%fedup.com, and it has to do with Tim Walz's fraud scandal in Minnesota. I'm just going to read this description. I think it's kind of a nice summary, and it says the following here, quote, "The Democrat media and Harris Walz campaign are working overtime to seize the narrative surrounding the freshly coronated ticket of Vice President Kamala Harris and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Walz is rightly under fire for his overstated military record, frightening views on free speech, and dubious relationship with the Chinese Communist Party. Rather than addressing these issues, Democrats are embracing the infamous advice of Mad Men character Don Draper, quote, 'If you don't like what's being said, change the conversation.' You may have noticed the media heaping praise on Walz's policies as governor, including the universal school lunch legislation he signed in 2023, ignoring that the program abuses taxpayer dollars by allowing wealthy families to take advantage of school lunch programs. The media roundly casts it in a positive light. Why? To change the conversation. The truth is that Walz's history of providing meals to hungry children isn't about feeding them at all. It says beginning in 2020, Walz allowed a fraud of massive proportions that exploited a taxpayer-funded child nutrition program during the pandemic. There was no pandemic. Only of stupidity. Which is a t-shirt, by the way, in my store. Feel free and check that out. The only pandemic is stupidity. It goes on, it says, some even called it the greatest grift in U.S. history. According to federal prosecutors, a Minnesota-based nonprofit called Feeding Our Future, FOF, committed the nation's largest pandemic relief fraud. $250 million was stolen from under the nose of Governor Tim Walz and his army of state education bureaucrats. 5 defendants have been convicted, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The fraud was conducted as a series of cascading kickbacks based on FOF's fraudulent reporting to Walz's administration. FOF's food sites overrepresented the number of meals they served to hungry children by the thousands set up by shell companies to sell the story, and then pocketed the millions in extra cash from reimbursements. The official narrative boasts the drama of a soap opera and the tension of a Hitchcock film. It features corruption, greed, and even a well-placed $120,000 bribe on a juror's doorstep. While the scandalous details around the Minnesota office of the legislative auditor, released a report that breaks down the fraud allegations over 103 plainly written pages. Their hidden crumbs reveal how such a fraudulent scheme was even possible. Walz had structured the Minnesota Department of Education in such a way that proper oversight was near impossible. The report shows that MDE suffers the same affliction as all the overwrought government agencies I oversee: diffuse decision-making that obscures accountability. As chairwoman of the Committee on Education and the Workforce, I am all too familiar with the education bureaucracies like the MDE enabling the misuse of taxpayer dollars. Minnesota businesses struggle under Governor Tim Walz. And then, it says video. It says, take for instance, page 55 of the report, which states that, quote, MDE inappropriately asked Feeding Our Future to investigate complaints about itself, unquote. Essentially, a complaint would approach the Minnesota Department of Education with an issue involving FOF, and education officials would say, quote, figure it out amongst yourselves, unquote. It's like a court allowing a defendant to be the judge at his or her own trial, a patently absurd way to dodge responsibility. It says, or on page 48, the report finds that MDE welcomed loose oversight requirements for high-risk sponsors, while this ostensibly helped maximize the number of meals served. According to the report, it also put the program's integrity at risk, unquote. A more cynical and honest assessment is that weakening the guardrails helped divert funds from hungry children. That's the end of the quotation in the summary here. Here's about a minute and 19 seconds of a woman in what appears to be the Minnesota House of Representatives, and she's railing on bureaucracies in Minnesota. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Minnesota has a horrific record when it comes to bureaucracies. MNsure, MNLARS, that's just a couple of them. And we aren't even discussing the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are pilfered in this state through waste, fraud, and abuse. Yet no one in any state government agency is held responsible for any waste, fraud, and abuse, or computer mistakes, or computer failures. You know who is held responsible? The Minnesota taxpayer. Sorry, taxpayers. Your taxes are going up. Why? Because of waste, fraud, and abuse. We here at the government aren't accountable, but you have to pay the bill. Oh, the computer program isn't working. You're going to have to pay some more hundreds of millions of dollars for that. Minnesotans are sick of it. Sick of it.
She's going to have to get in line. Of course, everybody's going to have to get in line. This is in every state, up and down, left and right. It doesn't matter. It's everybody. Everybody's involved in fraud. It's too much to even keep track of. And of course, to not investigate fraud, all you have to do is pay a few people off to not investigate fraud. And then it never gets investigated. It's typically how it works. And it's, there doesn't seem to be any end in sight, which is remarkably unfortunate. But that's the state of affairs. Love to see him go to jail someday. I don't know if there's going to be some vice presidential debate or not. Probably not, but seems like easy, low-hanging fruit for J.D. Vance when it comes to going after Walz's previous tenure there as governor. And, yeah, he's an abomination, and that pretty much goes without saying. Okay. Education stuff, here we go. Before I get into the Westerville LifeWise story and revisit that very quickly, because there's been an update to it, because there was a school board meeting back on September 9th, which I didn't mention at the time, but it's not an accident I'm bringing it up now. I wanted to get into the history here of the separation of church and state very quickly and what this actually means. And as I said at the top of the episode, Endless dummies have no idea what this actually means, and it's usually the people who love public school. Those are the people who have no idea what this means. So I came across this particular article again that does a nice job of summarizing all of this, and it was titled, "What does the separation of church and state mean? Is there such a law?" It says, quote, "Origins of the term separation of church and state. The term separation of church and state has been used, misused, and abused to mean separation of church from state. But where did this term come from, and is it a federal law? Surprisingly, you won't find it in the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the amendments, or any federal statute, even though 69% of Americans believe it is. Yet others think it's the First Amendment. It most certainly is not. The phrase separation of church and state originated from Thomas Jefferson on January 1st, 1801. Jefferson used this metaphor in a letter sent to the Danbury Baptist Association of Connecticut. Jefferson used the term wall, quote unquote, to make clear that the government was not to interfere with any religious practice. His intent was most certainly not to keep religion or religious symbols out of the public, state, or government or governmental offices or property. The term separation of church and state has been taken completely out of context and made into a pretext to say, quote, keep religion out of public, state, or government property or offices. This term has basically replaced what the First Amendment really says, even though the words separation of church and state, quote unquote, is not even in it. Interestingly, Jefferson attended worship services in the place that most politicians today would believe was illegal, in the House chambers of the U.S. Capitol building. Why would Jefferson believe that religion should be removed from the state and then hold worship services on federal property and at the same place where the Ten Commandments were displayed? Ironically, the term separation of church and state did appear in the Constitution of the former USSR. It goes on, it says, amendment of the U.S. Constitution is not a restriction of religion from the state, but a restriction of the establishing of a state-sanctioned and state-sponsored religion. It does not mean the Ten Commandments should be taken out of the public square, from government or state offices, the taking down of crosses from public roadways, or preventing the free exercise of Christian religion from being seen by the public. Here is what the First Amendment in reality says and what it doesn't say. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. It goes on, it says, notice that Congress, which consists of the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate, are not to make any law respecting any establishment of a religion. The original intent was to keep the state from sanctioning or sponsoring a particular religion as the official religion. Neither is it to prohibit the free exercise of expression of religion. There is nothing in this that says religion should be removed from public, state, or government offices or property. It is simply restricting Congress's establishing a specific religion itself. As the First Amendment says, quote, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, unquote, means no one should prohibit religious practices anywhere in this country. Instead of Jefferson's original intent to not restrict the freedom of religion, it has become a law to restrict religion, religious freedom, religious expression, and confine it to only one's place of worship or at home. Rather than being a prohibition of the free exercise of religion, it has been placed on its head and has been contorted to mean religion is to be restricted from the public square and state and federal places. If Jefferson meant that, then he was a hypocrite, because the first places of worship were the seat of government, were in the federal offices themselves. Typo. Anyway, yeah. And here it says Thomas Jefferson's original intent. Quote, Thomas Jefferson wanted a wall of separation from there being a state church. This is what many whom fled from England experienced, where the church and state were one and the same. He was concerned that the government would fund religion as they did in England, and that religious worship at a state church would be deemed compulsory. In his memoirs, he wanted to make sure that the state would not impose their own ideology or theology upon all churches. The U.S. Supreme Court's decision concerning separation of church and state is clearly a violation of the U.S. Constitution itself. There was most certainly not the Founding Fathers' intent. This was, rather, most certainly not the Founding Fathers' intent. The separation of church and state is not found in the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the amendments, or any legal document in the United States. It is the U.S. Supreme Court's job to enforce the law, not make laws. The U.S. Supreme Court has also violated its original mission. They have been making laws, they have invalidated laws, and they have declared them constitutional or not. This is not their job. This is the job of Congress. If there should be any separation, it should be for the Supreme Court to act as a court and judge whether cases are true or not. Let Congress do their job of passing, writing, or restricting laws. If anything, the Supreme Court should be separated from making laws or declaring them invalid. It would be better to say, let there be a, quote, separation of the court from lawmaking, unquote, or quote, separation of the court from the state, unquote. Maybe the First Amendment would better read, quote, the U.S. Supreme Court shall make no law. Let Congress make the laws. That is their job, unquote. Article was written by Jack Wellham. Yeah, 100%. And again, it had to do with money also. And this is lost among the brain dead, certainly on the left and even some on the right. It had to do with money. That government cannot control religion with money. And yet, what happened in the last 4 years? What happened with the COVID cash? It was a giant government-run money laundering scheme that found its way straight into every religious aspect and church within the United States. Only the most morally sound, who actually read the Bible and understand the Word of God, fully understand that taking a check from government is not the right thing to do. And many of them didn't take any checks from government. They said, go pound sand. We're going to do what we want to do, and we're going to keep our doors open, and no one's going to wear a mask, and we're going to advocate for people to never take any of these injections. And they educated their flocks, so to speak, and told these individuals about the dangers of government. Not so, though, with the vast majority of these churches. What it proved is there is a oneness, that there is a state religion. And unfortunately, that state religion is money. And who controls the flow of money? I think you know exactly who I'm referring to here. But that's a huge problem. And unfortunately, again, the people who stand up and are godless monsters, who stand up against programs that do not get paid by schools, who happen to be Christian programs or church-related programs that operate independently on their own, but just so happen to, again, have public school children attend, that these godless monsters misinterpret all of that accurate history and all of that accurate interpretation of real history to bend it their own way to fit their own political agendas. And endless people in this board meeting, some of which, of course, you're going to hear in just a minute, completely embarrassed themselves and made themselves look like the dumbasses they truly are. It's amazing. I find it amazing. You give the public a microphone, you're going to see how retarded your country is. I'm not kidding. Okay, so just to review, LifeWise, as a Christian program, is a youth Christian program. There is Bible study associated with it. There is individual critical thought. There's team building. But at the exact same time, there's a lot of reflection. There's a lot of getting to know your peers and getting along with others and people of different backgrounds and a number of other things. And LifeWise has been generational. You have numerous generations of individuals that have participated in this program and programs like it, and it's benefited a great many students, in particular students who attend public, private, and charter schools. But there's also a very, I think, face value reason as to why, certainly within the last 4 years, public schools would not want such extracurricular groups or outside groups that, again, don't affiliate with the school. They just happen to share public school students. But why public schools would want to disassociate from these kinds of groups. And the answer is that these kinds of groups like LifeWise threaten the brainwashing and indoctrination and torture that is delivered within the public school system. And the public school system hates being threatened. And if they know that they're being threatened by one of these groups, then they need to do whatever they have to do and make up whatever excuses they have to make up to get rid of them. And their first move, of course, is to listen to the mob and listen to the left-wing mob. The other thing to keep in mind here, when you hear these dialogues back and forth from both sides of this particular issue, is that the people that are advocating against LifeWise and trying to get the school district to do away with LifeWise, these parents don't send their children to LifeWise. So here's how it actually works. Elementary school age students go to school. And on the days, and it's like once a week, it's like every Wednesday. When their day is over, or in the middle of the day, whatever it may be, they're already wearing their LifeWise shirts on the days when they have LifeWise, or the day of the week when they have LifeWise. And then they go to school, and then they get on a LifeWise bus. Not a Westerville City Schools bus, but a LifeWise bus. So LifeWise pays for the transportation, not the public school. They get on the bus, they go to a local church, or local churches plural. They engage in their Bible study activities, they do the things that they do, and then they go back to school. Or they go home, whichever it is. Either way, the argument has really been from the left-wing mob that LifeWise students are bullying non-attending LifeWise students who remain in school while the LifeWise students go to LifeWise. And then they either come back and then they end up again just bullying those students who don't attend. This is a complete and utter lie that isn't justified with any evidence whatsoever. None. In fact, in this board meeting, a little girl comes up wearing a LifeWise shirt, and she talks about how she's insulted. That someone would paint her as being some kind of a bully, or that she pressures people to attend LifeWise. It's beyond outrageous. But again, the people who are attacking LifeWise are attacking the family structure. They're attacking God, they're attacking children, they're attacking responsible parents, and they're again trying to pin the school district against them also by saying, well, if something bad happens at LifeWise, then the school district can be held liable. And the fact is that's not true. They sign a waiver basically saying that if something happens at LifeWise, it's LifeWise's fault. The issue comes in with feeding these children, hence the Tim Walz fraud thing. It all boils down to the FDA and the USDA, specifically USDA, and feeding America's children via government. The USDA needs to get out of this, 100%. Pack a lunch, for God's sakes. Stop eating the goy slop that they serve in American schools. Just stop. It's disgusting. It's all poison. Everyone knows this. It was poison when I was in school. It was poison when you were in school. It's poison today. Even the salad bars are filled with poison. So, again, all of a sudden, schools, one of their backstops is to always basically say, well, it's our responsibility and our number one job to make sure that the quote-unquote kiddos are all fed. What an embarrassment. It is not your job. You provide terrible food for them. If they choose to eat it, fine. If they don't, fine. But if children don't want to eat your food or they want to attend LifeWise instead, there's nothing keeping LifeWise from having snacks and feeding these kids either. So here's the long and the short of it. All of these people spoke in this board meeting, and it was packed. I mean, it was about 2 hours worth of comments. And it was, it was repetitive on both sides. But at the exact same time, only one side was being remarkably insulting, and it was the left. The left was just constantly condescending and remarkably insulting. At the end of the entire meeting, the school board didn't make a vote one way or another. They just kicked the can down the road, and they said they're conversing with their lawyers to basically see what they can do when it comes to feeding students and whether or not they have to feed students or not, and then the business of liability and whether or not they can remove themselves 100% as a school district from being liable for anything. Now, this LifeWise program has been around for at least 2 years, if not longer than that, which means this entire so-called legal discussion that's taking place is a fabrication, because it's basically an admission that allegedly they've been breaking the law or they've never considered the business of liability even being a problem until the left-wing, non-attending mob decided to start screaming and yelling and shrieking like like the devils in the depths of hell and the demons that they are. I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. So I want to get in now to the audio of this, and you're going to hear again the opposing viewpoints. I'm gonna play someone from LifeWise first, and then I'm going to play a counterpoint, albeit a very bad counterpoint, but I'm going to play a counterpoint piece of audio associated with it also, so you can see the dynamic of this. It really is remarkably embarrassing. So here's the first piece of audio I'll play. This is again from a LifeWise advocate, a participant, and if not a full-blown instructor of the program. Give this a listen. In 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, President Meyer, board members, and Superintendent Hamburg. My name is Erin Taylor. I live at 329 Mary Avenue, Westerville, Ohio. I'm a former public school educator, a Westerville resident, and mother, but today I speak to you especially as a veteran LifeWise teacher who's been serving a group of students right here from an elementary in Westerville for the last 2 school years. In fact, this Thursday I would be teaching the students whose parents have already signed them up again for this year if it weren't for the suspension of the policy that allows LifeWise to operate. To my knowledge, none of you have seen a LifeWise class in action, so I hope that my perspective gives you insight so that you know the truth about a program that's directly affected by your decisions. From the moment I and the LifeWise volunteers enter the school, we take great care to be compliant, inviting, and positive in our attitude toward every adult and student with whom we interact. LifeWise students begin arriving with their lunches in the hallway, while all of the students in the same grade levels are also transitioning to either lunch or recess. So the movement to line up for a LifeWise class blends right in with the hum of activity present in that area of the building. Myself and the LifeWise volunteers greet the children by name and welcome them with a smile and an attitude of anticipation. Our weekly time together is the highlight of the week for the LifeWise staff. We don't teach these students every day, all day. This is not the middle of just another Thursday for us. We are serving these children with fresh energy and excitement to be with them. So for about 1 hour a week, because their parents want them to, my students are leaving the school building. What they are not leaving is a fully staffed and safe environment with challenging learning goals, including memorization and critical thinking. The students enter the red bus with adults whose sole purpose is to sit with them on the bus ride and listen to them. Connection is in the very fiber of every LifeWise class, and we know students need that. If LifeWise did nothing else for the students, the benefit of them just being heard is undeniable. But that's not all. We're skilled at listening to the students and encouraging them to apply the principles and character qualities we've been learning together. We listen and guide, and they open up. Many students share things they want to pray about or things they want to celebrate. Some visit with friends from other classrooms who share their same interest in learning from the Bible. The time spent on the bus, as well as throughout the LifeWise time, is organized, intentional, and most importantly, relational. Upon arrival at the LifeWise site, my students are taught in a brand new building with safety features in place. They eat lunch with well-trained and caring adults. They participate in games and movement activities and receive a well-planned lesson on character using biblical examples. They are challenged to apply what they have learned to become better students, community members, and friends. And then they return safely to the school during the same time that all of their classmates are also transitioning back to class from lunch and recess. When my students are leaving their time with me, they often express an interest in including a friend or a classmate in LifeWise. And I tell them that they may invite them to ask their parents. I have never once in the 2 years I've taught promised or provided any incentive for this invitation. Finally, it is important to note that many of my LifeWise students are from families that may struggle to have access to other extracurricular activities. Many of my students are from families who are new to the United States. Most live in apartments. I believe many of them receive a free or reduced lunch. All that to say, LifeWise is a big deal for the students from the school in which I serve. Students that might be underserved in other programs have access to a high-quality, Bible-based character education class during school hours with LifeWise. I want you to be aware of the population of students that your decision to pause the release time religious instruction policy will hurt. I urge you to continue the RTRI policy that allows LifeWise to serve families in the community that clearly desire it. I know that your participation as a school board member is motivated by a desire to serve the community and make decisions in its best interest and ensuring that everyone belongs. Allow LifeWise to continue doing just that, giving Christian students and those interested in the Christian faith a place to belong. Work with LifeWise to overcome any obstacles. It is worth finding a way for students to eat lunch in compliance with state policy. My students are literally waiting and counting on you to act on their behalf. Thank you.
Gee, what a nightmare. What a nightmare LifeWise sounds like. Oh no. I'm being sarcastic, of course. I mean, she's remarkably professional. Remarkably calm. Her head was up the whole time. She had a great script. She knew exactly what she was saying. This is why LifeWise threatens the public school system. Because the public school system does the exact opposite of what LifeWise does. Kids aren't bullied in LifeWise. They're not put down. They're not pulled on. They're not hit, kicked, punched. That doesn't happen in LifeWise. It happens in their buildings, in public school buildings, but it doesn't happen in LifeWise. Again, she's probably remarkably based. She's a former educator, as she just said. I bet she's wide awake. I hope so, anyway. Again, she openly highlighted the hypocrisy of the board by basically saying that none of them have even attended a LifeWise presentation when they have the open invitation to do so anytime they want. All they're doing is listening to the left-wing mob and reading emails because they're fat, stupid, and lazy. And that's all they do. She also highlighted the hypocrisy of their bullshit DEI stuff. She openly said that some of the participants of LifeWise are not from here. They're not from our country. They're Christians, but they're not from here. And then she goes, well, wouldn't that be strange? Because you'd be basically discriminating against them. Again, it's pointing out the hypocrisy of a public school system is easier than slicing a piece of bread. It's too easy. It's just too easy. This is what happens when they fall for all the social engineering time and time again. You can easily throw it right back in their faces. And they have no idea what they've actually fallen for in the first place. Okay, so now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play 3 people all in a row that spoke in this public comment section of this meeting. On the proverbial left, there's no doubt about the fact that these people are full-blown communists. And they, of course, are not advocating for LifeWise. They don't want LifeWise to exist within the public school system. The irony, of course, is that they don't even send their children to LifeWise, so why do they even care? Simple. This is the Marxist ideology. Marxists want everybody to be as miserable and stupid as they are. It's that simple. That's it. That has always been the Frankfurt School model. We are miserable, we are lonely, we are in our own little group, and we all suck. So we want to make everybody else be as miserable and sucky as we are. It's that simple. It's pathetic. And again, these people who are speaking at the lectern here are filled with more soy than you can possibly imagine. It's beyond evident they've never done a push-up or a sit-up in their entire life. It's really disgusting. But anyway, the first person is, I wish I could paint, I'm gonna paint this picture for you so you know who is actually saying this. This is a pale white guy. He's wearing black rim glasses like he works for the FBI in the 1960s. He's got a similar haircut. He's overweight. He's wearing dark clothes. He claims to be an engineer, and he has painted fingernails. Because again, when you're speaking publicly, on the record on YouTube, that's exactly how you're supposed to look if you want to be taken seriously. I am cursive, and I'm being sarcastic yet again. The guy looks like a schlub. I mean, he looks like the Soy Jack meme, without a doubt. So he's the first person to speak. And then I'm going to play the second and third person, and before I play the second and third person, I'll describe them before I play their audio also. So give a listen to Soy Jack here, the engineer, allegedly, with painted fingernails in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you to the board for allowing me to speak here tonight. Eric Smith, 380 Windermere Drive, Westerville. I'm a Westerville resident with 2 small children in Westerville Public Schools. I am a champion of public schooling because I believe that those who dedicate themselves to the education of our youth are the best of us. I'm not a teacher, but I have teachers in my family, and I have seen firsthand how difficult that job can be and how thankless it is. So I'd like to thank every employee of the Westerville City School District tonight. The janitors, librarians, art teachers, homeroom teachers, administrative staff, all the way up to the board. What you have chosen as a career path is admirable, and we parents appreciate you. Thank you. I would like to point out that you have repeatedly requested that there is a repeating message to please submit it to you to be read later. They're going to keep coming up here all night with the same copy, paste, wash, reuse statements. I would like to offer a fresh perspective to this narrative. Like I said, I'm not a teacher. I'm an engineer by training. And what is drilled into our heads is design intent. What was the architect intending when they landed on this solution? With that context, I would argue that LifeWise's architect has drawn up a deliberate attempt to manipulate children's social interactions to increase their participation rates in this program. They proudly claim that their goal is to reach unchurched children. They take these kids off campus, depriving students of the benefit of lunch with their peers and recess to teach a curriculum that they're not very excited to show everybody out publicly. All right. In fact, they were embroiled in a lawsuit with the man who published the curriculum, and they're hiding behind patent law. But let me go back to design intent. When I was a child, my favorite days were ones in which I had a doctor's appointment. You want to know why? It's because I knew that I would come back into school with a Happy Meal. All my friends would be jealous. I was the man of the hour, right? That's what these people are doing. They're sending their little red shirts back into schools with tales of candy, ice cream parties, begging their friends to join them. Midday recruitment works best. Send them back to school with a Happy Meal so that the other kids will see and be jealous of. Could they use the red school bus to provide an after-school program that lets children who are already of faith deepen their connection? They could, but they won't. That would not work for the agenda, because the design, you see, is for the kids to be visible at school after riding sugar high on the magic school bus and telling all of their friends about it for the rest of the day. It is all by design as an attempt.
I'm sorry, sir. Can we please keep the clapping sorry. Can we refrain from clapping? Thank you.
It's all by design as an attempt to reach out and scoop up as many children as possible by manipulating what kids do best, talking to their friends. It's not a bug in the system, it is the feature of the system. Now let me turn from design intent to risk assessment. Another major part of my field of work is looking out over the scope of a project and assessing the risk involved. When I look at this project of theirs, I find a big red flashing light, a warning sign that there is something that can go wrong, big wrong. Participation in this program can be had through online registration. One of my kids has the biggest case of FOMO I've ever seen. He will never take no for an answer if it's something that his friends are doing. All right? So, where does the liability fall if my son signs himself up online, gets on one of their school buses, against my knowledge, and God forbid that school bus gets into a car accident, and my son is injured or is dead? All right? Their little registration form has the liability indemnity checked off. They're not liable. Guess where I look next? I look to you guys. And my first question is, how could you let this program go forward? And all of my other questions will come from my lawyers. Finally, how hard did you fight after COVID to get the students back into the school buildings? And now you have this group of people trying to climb over the wall of church and state to drag them back out of your buildings. Don't let them. These people have every evening of the week and 2 days on the weekends to preach to their masses. Your motto is where you belong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the you is the children, not evangelical proselytizers. They think that they can educate the youth better than you. They don't respect you. You can tell this by how not a single one of them tonight will submit the repeat messaging to be read later. They have no respect for you. These people know that once they are allowed in, they will be exponentially harder to get rid of. So I close on a personal note. If somebody knocked on my door and asked to take my kids away to study something that they won't openly show me, and in the same breath have to explain that the rumors about them being politically affiliated or a cult are not true, I would tell them to get off of my property. This is your property. They're knocking on your door. What are you going to do? Thank you.
Again, a couple of things with his scripted, ridiculous speech. First of all, of course, he spent, I'm sure, a long time writing that, which is too bad. Over-dramatic and completely unnecessary. He licks the board's ass right out of the gate. Wanting to teach children is the most admirable position there is, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. So once he's done with all of that, you can hear his condescending tone when he's referring to individuals who participate in LifeWise. He says, these people, these people over here, their little form that they have people fill out. The thing to keep in mind, too, is this guy doesn't send his children. I mean, I'm shocked someone reproduced with him. Someone looked at him and said to themselves, yes, this man will provide for me and protect me. I mean, my God. One look at this soy jack, and anybody would, question that woman's intent and or motive or whatever. But either way, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. He doesn't have his children participate in this. They don't have children who randomly sign up for LifeWise without their parents' consent. It's not how it works. Your kid can't just disappear in the middle of the day from a public school system to go attend a Bible study without the parents knowing. I mean, he's a fool. He's an absolute fool. He's so certain of himself, and it's just so sad. I really don't know what else to say regarding him. I'm shocked anyone would applaud, but I mean, those people are just as nuts as he is, and ill-informed. Okay, here's the next person. Another soy jack comes up to the lectern. Again, this is a guy that someone has reproduced with. He has children in the district. He does not like LifeWise whatsoever. He doesn't send his kids to LifeWise, so it doesn't impact him in the slightest. But he doesn't apparently like the divisive nature of everything, and he's decided to, again, die on this hill. So, he's just a moron. But with that said, give him a listen now in 3, 2, 1.
Thank you, members of the board, for your service and for providing this forum to the community. Coming from a deeply concerned parent with a daughter in the Westerville elementary system, the LifeWise program is not good for the Westerville public school community. We can listen to testimonies from those affiliated with LifeWise all day, and I'm sure some great individual things would be highlighted. LifeWise teachers and support LifeWise. Crazy. But without sitting in on a session, which is not permitted, and I find that to be an enormous red flag, and without the ability to monitor children's interactions across the school day, all we really have to look back at are the last 2 board meetings to have a clear look at how divisive this program is. Look at what this has brought out in an otherwise tight-knit community. And listen, even if I'm being generous and I give those involved in the program the benefit of the doubt that their intentions are good, the program clearly causes division, which has been evident in this very room. I know we try to safeguard our children, and we think of them as shielded from such vitriol, but they are often smarter and more perceptive than we give them credit for. So to believe this division has not already crept into the schools and does not impact children's relationships, actions, judgments, and sense of belonging is just naive. The division is unnecessary and can be remedied by removing LifeWise as any part of a public student's school standard day. I heard several LifeWise advocates voice last meeting that LifeWise was a choice and we could simply choose not to participate in the program. But to rebut that, I already chose to have my child attend a school with no religious affiliation when I made the choice for them to attend a public school. If you believe wholesome values need to, for whatever reason, be anchored to Christianity or a certain religion, don't you have the choice to send your children to a Christian school or a private school? From what I've witnessed from my daughter in her 2 years in the Westerville public school system, you guys are doing a fantastic job all on your own, instilling positive values, fostering inclusivity, providing diverse educational options, and developing strong personal character for my child. So thank you. It's appreciated. One speaker from last meeting really bothered me when they compared rights granted via the RTRI guidelines. And this was the one which these allowed students who celebrate Ramadan to be excused from school activities for a religious observance, mind you, in private and not advertised. And they compared that to the LifeWise rights to continue utilizing a mechanized recruiting machine with branded red buses, shirts, treats, etc., no doubt purposed to postulate and indoctrinate young students to one certain set of religious beliefs. Blatant false equivalency. I mean, this is at best laughable and at worst incredibly concerning. If those affiliated with LifeWise are as passionate and dedicated as they portray in these meetings, then please take your energy and focus it in the programs that can happen outside of or are totally disassociated with the public school system. Run the programs outside of school hours or work towards making this a standalone private school. Take this out of the public's hands. In closing, thank you again to the board for listening. I beg you to please discontinue any affiliation with this organization. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I've kind of mentioned this before, but when I was a kid, I would attend education conferences with my dad that he was presenting at, and we would sit in the back of the room, the two of us, when someone was giving a presentation, and he would look at me and he'd say, see how they're doing this, see how they're doing that, and he would point out particular things that the speaker was doing or the kinds of presentations that they were giving and their mannerisms and all of that stuff. And he would be critical of the way that they would speak or how they would hold a microphone or where they were standing and all of this other stuff. It was almost as if, again, I was sort of being trained to be a teacher without knowing it, but at the same time, he sort of knew that a time would come where I would be doing a very similar thing, which of course I did. And we used to, and of course, the older I got, the two of us would sit in the back of the room and watch somebody give a presentation, and we would just look at each other and make eye contact and just shake our heads and just say, my God, this dumbass doesn't know what they're saying and how they're presenting and what they're doing. And we'd get a good chuckle out of it. This guy, it's not an audio problem on your end. He's standing too close to the microphone. I mean, it's that simple. It's very hard to take someone seriously when they're standing too close to a microphone. I know it sounds a bit petty, but again, if you want to be taken seriously, understand that there's a speaker in the room and that the feedback is going to be awful if you're yelling into the microphone and the microphone is too close to your face. Your message gets lost because all anybody's hearing is the fact that you apparently have no depth perception. So that's his fault out of the gate. Number two, the guy's a full-blown Marxist. And number three, like I said earlier, he wants everybody, including his daughter, to be as miserable as they are. His daughter has probably openly shown interest in LifeWise and asked questions as to what LifeWise is about. But because his daughter lives in a godless home with godless monsters, she's never going to end up going, which means separation from her parents is going to be the only chance that she has at finding God, which is just too bad. It's really sad. But again, these sanctimonious dickheads, they just come up to the lectern and they're so certain of themselves. It's really disgusting. In fact, I said I was only going to play one more. I'm going to play two more from the opposing side of LifeWise. And these are two old-timers. And they're both affiliated with a church of some kind. A Christian church, so they say. Now, at first, when this woman came up, who you're going to hear next, when she came up to the lectern and I was watching this, I thought, okay, this is going to be an advocate for LifeWise, just based on face value. This is an old woman. She's got the white collar around her neck. She's a female pastor, although that should have been potentially the first red flag. But either way, there she is. And she comes up and then she starts describing particular things. And I went, oh no, she's a full-blown Marxist. She's one of these borderline lesbians who lets just about anybody into her church and probably preaches the whole, whatever the hell it is, bisexual, indigenous, people of color bullshit. And she probably does. But then at the very end, she throws in the term white supremacy. And she references Corey DeAngelis and his book and, how it's basically just advocating for white people and how the public school system is an indoctrination brainwashing program, and she completely disagrees with all of that. She loves public school to the bone. This woman embarrasses herself as probably more than the rest, although the next guy you're going to hear after her actually thinks that dinosaurs are real. I kid you not, he even brings this up, and he's a professor of emeritus at, I forget which university, but you'll hear him say, either way, he's a professor emeritus of religion, of all things, and the guy thinks that dinosaurs are real. But here's this female pastor here, and again, just a complete embarrassment. She knows not what she speaks of. Give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Mary Jean Boatler.
Okay.
6546 Haddam Place West, Westerville. Members of the board, superintendent, I'm Mary Jean Boatler, retired Presbyterian pastor who lives in Amherst and volunteers in the Amherst Elementary School. I'm a lifelong supporter of public education and teachers union, as is the denomination that I have served for 40 years. For 12 years, I served on the board of Westminster John Knox Press, one of the most respected religious publishers in this country. In fact, I chaired that board. The publishing house's newest children's imprint, Flyaway Books, is an award-winning collaboration of top biblical scholars and academically trained Christian educators. This is all to suggest that I know something about good children's curriculum and can identify toxic children's curriculum. I would place LifeWise curriculum in the category of toxic theology. I have grave concerns about embedding that curriculum into the public school day, what that means for the mental health and well-being of children under your care. I listened to the public comments last time online. Many parents offered anecdotes about their children's enjoyment of LifeWise. Of course, every religious program, from the most egregious to the most respected, can offer such anecdotes. We all speak well of groups in which we are engaged. However, the responsibility of the Board of Education is to look beyond those comments and connect the dots. Let me share how I began to connect those dots. I was making muffins one day. My earphones were in, or earpods pods were in, and I was listening to C-SPAN's Book TV, on which authors appear promoting their latest book. This day's guest was new to me. His name was Corey DeAngelis, and I soon learned that his passion was advocating against teachers' unions and what he called government schools. He promotes the abolishment of the Department of Education and is a strong supporter of public money vouchers being funneled to private schools. Same line that I have heard many times, nothing new to see here. However, my ears perked up when he began to talk about the way in which public schools were indoctrinating children, and those children were growing into adults who were politically active. He pointed out that only a small portion of students were in private education, and therefore there was a great need to reach children in the public schools before they could be indoctrinated with woke ideas. He somewhat gleefully described the loophole many had found in the RTRI law. It opened up a new, and these are his words, a new mission field. The same language and approach used by LifeWise and promoted by its funders. Now, what does this all tell us? This is not about character education, although I would contend that what LifeWise teaches has little to do with character. Amherst Elementary is teaching character education. It's just not the kind of loving and inclusive character traits that LifeWise's narrow view of the world endorses. This is not about character education. It's not even about religious education. That could be done after school. That can be done on the weekend. It is about political power. It's about supplement. It's not about supplementing what the school is teaching. It is about replacing public education in this country. When I visited the LifeWise offices to learn more about the curriculum, I asked the president what public school his children attended. No surprise, his children are not in public schools. I would wager that most of those who design and benefit financially from this business model do not have children in the public school. My admonition, play in your own sandbox and leave our children and our public schools alone. You have a plethora of religious schools in which you are free to promote your wares. The Westerville Board of Education is the only thing that stands between our schools and the political agenda of those who would, and I quote, and this is my final quote, weaponize race, identity, and faith to dehumanize and endanger vulnerable, marginalized communities and dismantle public education. These attacks are rooted in white supremacy
Butler,
values.
Your time is up. I'm sorry.
Thank you for
Again, this is a so-called woman of the cloth. She's dressed up in all her pastor gear. She's wearing the uniform. I mean, she's not a woman of God. She can't be. She's an absolute demon in a disguise. And then, of course, at the end, all the demons start applauding and screaming, and oh yes, see, we have our female Presbyterian pastor advocate for our Marxist ideologies, going after people who are Christians. This is exactly, and she specifically, is exactly what Thomas Jefferson was warning about. People just like her. That once the church becomes corrupted by government, you won't be able to tell the difference between the two. There's no difference between her and a full-blown communist. None. They're identical. They sound exactly the same. She's using all the same terminology that a communist uses. She ended it up, of course, and rounded it out with the old white supremacy. I'm an advocate for public schools and unions, and anybody who says that the Department of Education, like Corey DeAngelis, that it should be eliminated, these people are misguided and they have no idea what they're talking about. This woman couldn't be more out of touch with reality. Not a clue. I bet she's jabbed to the bone and wears a mask, and God knows how many people in her church jabbed, probably even by her own hand. Not to mention what I thought was arguably one of the most insulting things that she said was when she referred to LifeWise talking about God, and she referred to it as their wares, peddling their wares. They're spreading the word of God. They read the Bible. Why is that a ware? Why is that some frivolous thing in your mind? Again, this is what happens when you get a liberal female pastor in charge of anything. They sound like a complete fool. I think her words pretty much speak for themselves, but she is exactly what Thomas Jefferson was afraid of. That there needs to be a separation, because if there isn't a separation between government and the church, you won't be able to tell the difference between the two. Now here's the last individual. Again, there were many more, but here's the last one I'm going to play, who is an advocate for getting rid of LifeWise. This is the guy who thinks that dinosaurs are real. He probably, of course, thinks that the moon landing happened. And this is the professor of emeritus of religion at some university. Give this nitwit a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Members of the board, my name is Rick Nutt, 65 Haddam Place West. I'm Professor Emeritus of Religion at Muskingum University. My field is U.S. religious history, and I'm here to speak to the question of the LifeWise Release Time for Religious Instruction, or RTRI program. This is only a matter of church-state separation in a peripheral way. For good or ill, the Supreme Court declared RTRI programs constitutional. That's not really a matter about which we need to debate here. Nor, in one sense, is what LifeWise teaches theologically a matter for your concern. To approve or disapprove of the theology or religious teaching in such a program is beyond any government entity's purview. However, if that religious instruction contradicts the values the district promotes and disrupts community in the schools, for instance, if it denies the value of all religions or the affirmation of all gender identities, then the school board may want to deny the program. The only constitutional question would be if, in fact, school personnel play a role in promoting or supporting student participation in LifeWise in any way beyond what is necessary to allow the children to take part in it. That would be unconstitutional, and such support or promotion would be important information for you to have. My concern goes in another direction. I have seen some LifeWise curriculum, approximately 10 lesson plans, and I'm convinced that some of what is taught is in contradiction to what students are taught in Westerville schools. For instance, one lesson plan dealt with the creation of the universe in the book of Genesis. The creation of the world was taught in a literal way, emphasizing what was created on each of the 6 days of creation. An activity for the students was then to match various items, say trees, humans, stars, with the day on which they were made. One choice was to identify the day on which T-Rexes were created. I hope that no science teacher in our schools ignores the accepted understanding of evolution, and that none teaches a scientific view in which dinosaurs and humans existed at the same time in history. This is just one example of a contradiction between the LifeWise and Westerville curricula of which I am aware. I've heard reference to the quality of the curriculum. I can assure you that a biblical approach which does not acknowledge that there are 2 creation stories in the book of Genesis would not be accepted by biblical faculty in our best theological institutions. There's another matter I would raise. Should LifeWise continue in the Westerville schools and eventually grow into the middle and high schools, I'm concerned that when dealing with U.S. history, the students might be taught a basic idea of Christian nationalism. That is, that the United States was founded as a Christian nation and should return to its Christian roots. The understanding of the role of religion in our nation's founding is complex, and it requires a great deal of nuance as religion related to secular and cultural and political factors in the colonies and our new nation. But it is never correct simply to assert that our nation was founded as a Christian nation or that Christianity should have priority in our national life in any way. There are other important elements to this question that you've heard. I have chosen here, as I leave others with more expertise as educators to address those other issues, I wanted to put before you my concern about an area in which I think I'm qualified to speak. Thank you for your time and for your hard work.
The guy's completely retarded. I mean, I don't have, I feel bad for him. That level of stupidity is really next level. This is what happens when people get caught in their own heads and in their own credentials and in their own words, and they don't put all of that bullshit aside and they just learn freely. He would do well to read Socrates and learn that he should get to a place where he should know that he knows nothing. That way you can always start off with a blank slate and learn everything. Again, the implication that he was making was that LifeWise, in one of the questions, whether it be a multiple choice question or what have you, was trying to get the students to recognize that dinosaurs are not in the Bible, that dinosaurs are not in the book of Genesis, that Noah and his ark didn't, blow a whistle and say, all right, dinosaurs, you're next. Because dinosaurs aren't real. This has been proven time and time and time again, but he doesn't understand that. The sad part is that dinosaurs are brought up in elementary school in public school systems. They're not brought up, usually, in middle schools and high schools. And again, sadly, if they are, and the teachers are actually teaching that, this is one of the reasons why they want to get rid of TikTok and why they want to get rid of social media and cell phones in schools, because students would easily be able to get on, for example, Eric Dubé's website and show people a 2-hour documentary about how dinosaurs and that fairy tale were created in the mid-1800s by Freemasons. I've been over this on the show before, and anybody can go and look up that particular documentary. It's highly educational and it's indisputable. I should send it to this old-timer. He might do well to, sit down and learn. But he's too old, I think, at this point. I mean, he's not going to shed his skin for the purpose of learning something new, or in particular, unlearning something that he is so firmly entrenched in believing. It isn't going to happen. Same thing is true with evolution. He seems to believe evolution is real, and that schools, public schools in particular, which of course is government, should be teaching evolution. Well, who created evolution in that theory? It was Charles Darwin. When? The mid-1800s, the same time as the dinosaur fairy tale. That's not an accident. It was on purpose. In fact, to paraphrase Darwin, he openly stated, if anybody is dumb enough to believe in evolution, well, then they have it coming. You have to be completely absent of any thought or observation in order to believe the lie of evolution. He was quite literally a plagiarist, and he was laughing at people who believed the things that he wrote. But again, he was tied in with Masons, and Freemasonry, by the way, is Jewish. This is a giant lie. He doesn't know any of this. These people don't understand the levels of deception. They have no grasp of it. In fact, in the description below of this episode, here's what I'll do. Eric Dubé has a 30-minute video very recently on the lie of evolution. I'll link it in the description below, and you can give it a watch, in particular if you have children. It's highly educational. So, yeah, I should send it to this guy. Of course, he'll ignore it and try to get in some, large-worded debate about the whole thing. It's very simple. It was a fairy tale created in the mid-1800s. That's it. You can't go backwards in time before the 1800s and even hear the word dinosaur. It wasn't even around. It didn't even exist. These people, honest to God, these people, they have no idea what they're doing. Not a clue. But here's a little girl who does know. And you even heard it earlier. One of the left-wing Marxists openly stated that, kids can tend to see things rather clearly. Well, here's a kid who can see things rather clearly. This is a young female student who attends the Westerville City Schools, God only knows why, and she attends LifeWise. And she gives everybody her 2 cents without a script. As to, again, I think she doesn't have a script anyway. It's rather smooth. She's far smoother than the Soy Jacks who spoke earlier. Excuse me, but she's very eloquent, and it's very well done, and she's getting a lesson in how when you stand up for Jesus, the demons will attack you, and the godless will attack you. This also is in the Bible. You would think that the professor of emeritus would be able to see what's happening in this room. You would think that the female left-wing Marxist pastor with her white collar who claims to be a Presbyterian would see what's happening in the room from a biblical standpoint, but they're both absent. These are not people of God. These are people who throw their credentials around and their status around like it matters. God doesn't give a damn about status or credentials, but he does care about this little girl. So give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
My name is Gianna Amadeo. I am a fifth grade student at Hanby Elementary. I live at 359 Wildwood Drive. And I've been looking forward to going to LifeWise since the last lesson in April. And I know a lot of other students have too. Some people are telling you to get rid of LifeWise, and by getting rid of it, you're getting rid of one of the most fun parts of our day. As a fifth grader, I know everyone is told that they would be able to go all through elementary school. A lot of students are expecting that promise to be kept. I heard people talking against LifeWise, and someone said that they thought that kids who go to LifeWise like me were bullies, and that hurt. Saying that kids like me who believe in Jesus are mean and violent is so true, it's kind of sad. Another person said that LifeWise talked about LGBTQ, but we've never had a discussion about that. I also want to make something clear. As a LifeWise student, I know from experience that we did not get candy, so I'm not sure why people are complaining about that. I heard people talking badly about LifeWise, and they didn't even have kids in a LifeWise school yet, so that didn't really seem fair. At LifeWise, we do a lot of really fun stuff. We still get to talk to our friends during lunch, and then we watch a video about the Bible story we're learning about that day. We also have a recess where we get to play fun games about the lesson, and then if we have time, other games too. There isn't anything bad about that. About the whole safety issue, every day when we go to the church, someone always has to use a key of some sort to get us in. Just like at school, we're very clearly safe. LifeWise should be the parents' choice, not the choice of other people. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If you want to go to their YouTube channel and watch this, she gets done speaking at the 1 hour and 18-minute mark. 18 minutes and 49 seconds. The look on her face when she's walking back to her seat is priceless. She has a smile from ear to ear, with the most logical people in the room applauding. This little girl just called out every liar in the room, every soy jack Marxist fraud in the room. You say we have candy and we're bribing people with candy? She goes, I've never received any candy from LifeWise in all the time I've been there. They don't hand out candy. You call me bullies? You call us bullies? That hurts our feelings because we're not bullying anybody. She openly said it's arguably the most fun she has all day. I mean, honest to God, what an indictment on the public government-run school system. It's the most fun thing she does. If I was her parent, of course, I wouldn't be sending her to such an abomination of a school district, not in the slightest. This is a more well-rounded child than most children you're ever going to come across. Period. I'm actually jealous. I'm jealous of her parents. Her parents know exactly what they're doing. I just wish that they would homeschool her, because clearly she can read. She did have something written down, and she was hardly looking at it. So, I mean, this is a perfect girl who fits the parameters of everything I say on the show on a constant basis. She can teach herself. There's no reason for her to rely on government in the slightest for anything, let alone her parents. Again, what an indictment of the American public school system when she openly says it's the safest and best time of her day. Honestly, I love it. I just love it. In one fell swoop, she took down every Marxist in the room. Because Marxism, as we know, is built on a foundation of fraud. It's built on a foundation of lies. They have no room to stand. It's been said time and time again. These parents are so stupid who are advocating for the removal of LifeWise that they themselves not only don't send their own children, but they themselves have never actually gone to any of the instruction to hear it themselves, nor have any of the board members. So it took quite literally an elementary school-aged girl to go up and browbeat all of them and strike them down with the flaming sword of truth. I love it. I absolutely love it. God bless her, and God bless the people who are advocating for LifeWise and participating. You're showing everybody that government-run schooling is satanic, that it is the enemy, that it seeks to distract and pull people away from God. That was not its original intent, but that is the intent, and now, certainly, and that's the way that it has become, so much so that the demons who are in that room are screaming at the tops of their lungs when they don't get their way. It's incredible. Okay, here's the last piece of audio. It's unrelated to LifeWise, but this is the guy that I said I would consistently play because this is the guy who shows up in every board meeting destroying the entire board about their levy that's going to be on the November ballot and coming up regarding, again, well, here's what he does. I'll summarize it very quickly, and he goes through it point by point. He started a Facebook group about anybody in the area who wants to vote against the levy. I love it. And then he goes through how this is a permanent levy, that it will never go away, and that people's property taxes will get higher with every passing year. And he tells you how much it's going to cost. And he tells you, of course, again, that this entire levy is completely unnecessary. I love this guy. Give him a listen in 3, 2, 1.
No LifeWise again. I'll move on to a different topic. Let's talk about my favorite topic, the levy. So, on behalf of, we now have a nice little group formed called Westerville Levy Concerns. I have a nice Facebook page if you want to look it up. It's business owners, senior citizens, retirees, parents. There's quite a group that is formed. Let's talk about the impact of what the levy will be if it passes. This permanent school levy has a lot of domino effect to it. Let's talk about business owners first. Again, the 16% increase to school property taxes, what does that do to business owners? It forces them to raise prices. They can't just absorb another cost increase. So what happens when you raise prices? Your sales go down, hurt your business. We don't need more failing businesses. Second, renters, apartments and homes that are being rented in the Westerville School District. What happens to those folks? Well, landlords, again, like a business owner, you're not just going to absorb another school property tax like the reevaluation we just had. So what's going to happen there? I'm betting rents are going to go up. So do apartment people like that? Do people that are renting homes like that? No. So what's that going to do? Force them to move out of the district, move somewhere, but rents are going up. I can pretty much assure you if this passes, it's going to happen. Senior citizens, 16% increase to their school property taxes. What does that mean? It means a lot. And what it means is sacrifices. Food, medical, what are they going to have to sacrifice? Again, after the reappraisal of real estate property values that just happened. So are they going to move? Where are they going to move to? All the values are up. So they can't move. They can't afford to stay. They can't afford to go. Their prices are going up. What are they going to sacrifice? I know many senior citizens now, since I'm 64, I know a lot of folks that are retired senior citizens on fixed income. It's not good for them. So the impact of those folks, not good. All residents in general, a 16% increase in your school property taxes. What are you going to cut back on? I've already thought about what I would have to cut back on. Is it pay-to-play school activities? Is it medical? Is it food? What is it going to be? It's a sacrifice. You have to give to the school system when you were taking it yourself. Now what are you going to have to do? Sacrifice. So overall, it's a sacrifice for everybody. It has a huge impact on the community, business owners, renters, landlords, everybody. So the problem is, if property taxes are going up on average $172 for every $100,000 in valuation, what does that mean? Well, the average home value in zip code 43081 is $354,000, believe it or not, after the last reevaluation. So what's that going to cost you as a homeowner if that's your average valuation? It's $608.88. That's what your increase is going to be next year. So because it's a permanent tax levy, it's not only going to be $608 this next coming year. Over the next 10 years, it's going to be $6,088. I've lived in my house for 31 years. So the next analogy is, after 20 years, what is it going to cost you? $12,177 if this levy passes. So it's not just 1 year, it's 5 years, it's 10 years, it's 20 years. It's a permanent levy. Never a chance to vote on again. You can never rate the system on whether they're doing a good job or a bad job with your money. So as an example, the $30 million that was just transferred from a general operating levy, which that's exactly what we're talking about now, just got transferred from general operating to capital. So once this gets voted in, and if the law doesn't change, they can do whatever they want as a board with that money. Home value. If you're $500,000, which is a lot of now $500,000 values, that means over the next 20 years, you're going to pay $17,200 more. So all this simply means is it's permanent, it's expensive, and it's totally unnecessary. Those are the problems. The solution. I would encourage everybody to vote to register if you haven't already by October 7th. If you just recently moved into the district, change your address so you can vote. And when you do vote, vote no on this issue 44. And I would encourage the board to redo the 5-year projections, make them more realistic, transfer back the $30 million so we don't need any more money over the next 5 years. And if anybody would like to join our group, it's Westerville Levy Concerns on Facebook. See you next board meeting. Thank you.
Next up.
Again, I love this dude. He's the best. He summarizes it perfectly, and here's the best part, and this is how stupid school boards are. It takes a citizen to just sit back and read all of the documentation and actually know what the district is doing, that the district itself doesn't know what it's doing. The district has no idea that what he just said is actually what their levy is all about. He broke it down number by number. I mean, school districts hate the public so much. And they do. I mean, they despise us. They hate us so much that they literally believe that if they just say that something has to happen, that we won't check them. We won't provide any oversight. We won't provide our 2 cents on anything, let alone read the facts and look up the facts. They have no clue. And when this guy shows up and does their job for them, and tells the public the truth about what's really going on, you should see the looks on their faces. I mean, all these demonic women behind the table of this school board, and they're all women. Again, no offense to the ladies out there, but there's no men on this board, and there's nobody like him telling the truth about what's really going on. And of course, he's gone back and forth with the one board member, Mrs. Valentine, where he was in the audience after speaking. And it was her turn to speak, and she was talking about the levy, and he just yells out, "Do better, do better." And she goes, "Sir, this is my time. This is my time to talk." I mean, it was perfect. But the looks on their faces, they hate this guy. Because again, in a nutshell, when it comes to levies and school levies, he just broke down everything that happens with every American school levy. And he's right. Westerville's levy is a permanent levy. everybody in the area will consistently be paying into the school district, regardless of the financial times of the time. They'll be paying more money than they can afford. It's just nuts. The selfish nature of these school boards is amazing, and the amount of work that their stupidity costs everybody else to actually do more work it's incalculable. You can't possibly calculate the amount of money that gets wasted in all other businesses outside of the school district itself when the school district doesn't know how to run their own books and they don't know how to cut cost on their own. It's incredible. So I'm going to end the episode with that. I'm losing my voice. Excuse me. Thanks for listening as always. I appreciate it. But that's the real definition between church and state and the separation that Thomas Jefferson wanted. That's the LifeWise program and the demonic Marxists that clearly don't want it. And then God himself hoists up a little girl to slay all of those stupid bastards in one fell swoop. And then again, another guy shows up and handles the finances and does all of their job for them and embarrasses all of them in the process. I love it. I love it. We're winning, ladies and gentlemen. We're winning. And exposing these people is getting easier by the day, so we have to keep doing it. With that said, thanks for listening as always, and I'll catch you on Friday. Peace.
Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.